Welcome, everyone. My name is Logan. I'll be your presenter today for the 5 questions you need to answer before you retire. Before we really jump in, I do just want to thank everyone for showing up. I know your time is the most valuable non-renewable resource you have, and I do want to respect that. I would expect this webinar to take anywhere from 30 to maybe 40 minutes, plus just however long it takes to answer your questions at the end. I'll make sure to stay on until at least noon, and then we'll see where that takes us. Let me go ahead and introduce our team and why you should care about what we have to say about retirement planning in the first place. So again, I'm Logan Whitlock. I've got a little bit over 8 years of experience. I'm a certified financial planner, and I've been working here at the law office of Shale David since about 2014, with the exception of a 1-year break where I was deployed to Afghanistan as a military intelligence officer. Most of what I do is focused on retirement planning. And in case you couldn't tell from the slide, Linus Whitlock, our Director of Financial Services, also my dad. This is a second career for him. So his first career was in CSI as a trace evidence examiner, and he takes that same level of attention to detail and applies that to financial planning. He and Cheryl have been working together since about 2004. Speaking of Cheryl, she's our partner on the law side and also an owner in the business. Cheryl originally partnered with Wisdom Wealth Care back in 2004 when she saw how devastating bad advice can be. The tech crash caused a lot of her clients to lose almost everything they had, and she saw how devastating that could be. And so she wanted to bring in a team that could give good advice to her clients. Right now, she's focusing on providing our clients with an estate plan and protecting what matters the most to them. David, he's our client services coordinator and also the one that's going to help schedule any meetings and just our chief problem solver. Whenever there's an issue, he's the one that's going to be our go-to guy. He's also going to be the one in the chat answering any questions you have during the webinar. Speaking of questions, when you think of a question, go ahead and click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and just type it in. If it's something David can answer really quick, he will. If not, I'll make sure to cover that at the end. Some questions just might be a little bit too private or just too complicated to answer in a quick webinar format like this. If that happens to be the case, we do offer a free, no obligation financial consultation. We'll put a Calendly link in the chat. All you need to do is click on that link and then schedule the date and time that works best for you. So I'll go ahead and put that in case you need to do that. Or you could just shoot us an email or give us a call at the number at the bottom of the screen. So we'll start with why we do what we do. So we've each got our own origin story about how we started, how we got into financial planning, but it really all boils down to we want to make sure all of our clients have peace of mind about their financial future and they know they're going to be okay no matter what. And what we do, how we actually make sure that happens. We are a one-stop shop for all of our clients' financial needs. So under the same roof, we can do a retirement income plan to make sure you never run out of money while meeting all your needs. You can manage your investments to make sure you have the best possible return for whatever given level of risk you're willing to take. Also, in the same building, under the same roof, we can help you make a tax plan. We have a CPA we partner with who can make sure you get to keep as much of your money as possible, because it's not just what you make, it's what you get to keep that matters. And we can ensure you have a complete estate plan. Our estate planning team, because it's not when, but if you die or become disabled, that you need to have a plan, and we want to make sure those you care about are taken care of. And then all of the other little pieces that can matter more or less to some people at different times of their lives. We want to make sure all of those are integrated, whether it's managing risk with or without an insurance plan, education funding, Medicare, Medicaid, or business succession planning and special needs. We will make sure all of these are work together well. And then who we work with. So typically 90% of our clients tend to be either couples or independent women, 55 and up, typically who are in retirement or in the retirement red zone. And not only do they want financial advice, but they see enough value in it to be willing to pay for it. But that's enough about us. Let's go ahead and jump into why we're here today in the first place. The 5 questions we're going to answer today. So there's, when can I retire? And its corollary question, how much can I spend in retirement? And then, I don't have enough to retire. What options do I have now? What can I do about it? How should I actually invest in retirement? How do I replace my paycheck, right? Because you're not going to have that monthly or biweekly paycheck anymore. How do you get money into your bank account? And when should I take Social Security, right? And we're not going to have enough time today to really go through and give a personalized full answer to every single one of these questions for every possible scenario, but we can at least give you a framework for where to start and a general direction to head in. And for those more personal questions, we do have a Q&A at the end, where at the bottom of the screen, you can click the Q&A and type in your question. We'll also enter a Calendly link if you want to set up a time to meet with us in person, to have a more in-depth, possibly longer conversation. I'll go ahead and post that for anyone who's just getting in here. So the first question, when can I retire and how much can I spend in retirement? This is an easy one, right? You can retire when you're willing and able to live on your assets and your passive income. That's it, right? And it gets a little bit more complicated than that, doesn't it? There are 3 big parts to this, right? There's your spending in retirement. How much do you need to sustain your lifestyle? There's your passive income, right? How much are you getting guaranteed each month? This could be through Social Security, maybe a pension, or even guaranteed income through an annuity or something like that. And then the assets you have funding your retirement. So we've got a couple equations that come from this. Don't worry, they're not too complicated. Your spending minus your income gives the shortfall. And this shortfall is what your assets need to make up. So if we look at that annual shortfall and divide it by the assets you have, that gives us a withdrawal rate. Let's look at an example, because I always work better if I have an example to work through. So this is Bill and Mary. They're a married couple. They want to be able to spend $5,000 a month every month in retirement. But they already have $3,000 a month from Social Security or pension, which means they have a $2,000 a month shortfall, which works out to about $24,000 a year. And they have that $600,000 retirement portfolio. The question is, can Bill and Mary retire? Well, let's look at that, right? So their spending is $5,000 a month, and they've got that $3,000 a month guaranteed income, which makes their shortfall $24,000 a year. So we take that shortfall and divide it by their assets of $600,000, and that gives us 4%. How does that stack up, right? Is that a good number? Is that a bad number? Let's talk about it. So if your withdrawal rate is 4% or less, it's probably safe to retire. You're probably there. There's a really big asterisk on this, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if it's at or around 4%, you're probably safe. If it's between 4 and 6%, you're pretty close. You might not be there yet, or it might be okay, but you're pretty close. If you're above 6%, it's going to be risky. It's not that it won't work, but there's definitely going to be a little bit more risk involved there. There are a number of factors that could affect what's a good number or what's not, right? So let's talk about that asterisk. Like how old are you, right? The older you are, the larger percent you could draw. How much risk are you willing to take, right? What are you willing to invest in? Do you want to make sure you leave anything to your heirs? Is that important to you? How confident are you in your spending assumptions? right? Are you confident in that $5,000 number, or maybe is 5.5 or 6,000 possibly correct? What do your taxes look like? Because that's going to affect everything. But in general, for a middle-class individual or couple in their mid-60s who want their assets to last at least as long as they do, they're willing to invest moderately, maybe make some minor adjustments along the way, and don't care too much about leaving a large inheritance. 4% is probably a safe starting point. And this really makes intuitive sense if you think about it, because if you withdraw 4% per year, and your investments keep up with inflation, you can keep this up for 25 years before you run out of money. And if you're retiring at 65 and your investments don't even make anything beyond inflation, that'll last you all the way to age 90. And for most people, that's probably okay. But if you take that 6% number, you take out 6% each year, that'll only last you 16, maybe 17 years. And that's only going to get you to age 81 or 82. And for most people, that's just not going to cut it. And it doesn't just make intuitive sense, but there's also an almost excessive amount of research to back this up. The original study was called the Trinity study, and it found that given a 30-year retirement with a 50-50 stock and bond mix, you could take out 4% each year, increase it with inflation, and there's never been an historical scenario where your money runs out before you do. Now, past returns don't guarantee future results, but the past is all we have to go on. And this isn't a replacement for a financial plan, but it can be a good place to start. So, question 2, I don't have enough to retire. What are my actual options? Well, you got a couple of them. Option 0 isn't my recommendation. It's to stick your head in the sand. Pretend like it's not an issue, pretend like everything's going to be okay, or just ignore it in general. And this is probably what 70 to 80% of people do. When you're in your 30s, 40s, or even 50s, it's easy to just pretend like this is a problem for future me and not worry about it. And it's not what I recommend, but it's the route some people take. So one possibility is just work longer. It's not a good answer for everyone, right? It's not always possible. It could be you're injured or you just don't want to work anymore. But it is mathematically a very strong solution for a few reasons. One, it allows more time for your investments to grow and compound and get larger. It allows for more contributions into your investment portfolio. The longer you work, the more months, the more years you're adding to it. And you have a shorter retirement to fund. So each year you keep working is a year less of your retirement that you have to fund. And your income's probably going to get larger. The more years you're adding into Social Security, the more years you're adding to your pension, the larger they're going to be. And in general, as long as people are working, they're pushing back, taking their Social Security for later and later, allowing it to compound even more. But again, the drawbacks are fairly obvious. It's not always possible for everyone. So what else can you do? Another option is you can just spend less or save more. These two really do go hand in hand. If you're earning the same amount and spending less, then almost by definition, you are saving more. It's, again, the drawbacks are pretty obvious. You may not be able to do all the things you wanted to do. You may have to downsize or become a one-car family or not vacation as much. But the mathematical effects are quite severe for a couple of big reasons. One, you're saving more, but two, and this is a bigger one, the closer and closer to retirement you get, your shortfall gets significantly larger. Let's look at that. So the Bill and Mary example, right? They wanted to spend $5,000 a month, but they're willing to spend $4,000 if they have to, right? So they still got that same $3,000 a month of income from Social Security and pension. But what this means is their shortfall is half as large. It's 50% as large. So instead of $2,000 a month, it's only $1,000 a month of shortfall, which means in this scenario, even if their retirement portfolio is half as large, is only 300,000 instead of 600,000, they're still able to take out the same percentage each year, that 4% each year, even though they're only spending 20% as much. So like I said, even if they have half as much of their retirement portfolio, their income only drops by 20% because of that income from Social Security and their pension. So that's a very powerful answer, but not always the one you want to use. So option 3 is to work part-time in retirement. And again, the drawbacks are obvious, but the mathematical effect is very similar to spending less during retirement. So in a hypothetical scenario, if Bill decides he wants to work part-time at Lowe's and earn about $1,000 a month, the math works about the same, but they get to spend what they want. So let's say they've got $3,000 a month from Social Security. Bill makes $1,000 a month working at Lowe's. And then they can pull $1,000 a month from their portfolio that's only $300,000, and they're able to spend what they want and keep that same withdrawal rate. But Bill may have to continue working for quite some time in order to keep up that same expense. Option 4 is just be okay with more risk or more flexibility. So it's possible to start your retirement with a 5 or even 6% withdrawal rate, so long as you know there's some risk in that, right? There's a risk of that partway through your retirement or even early on, there's a market correction, and you might have to severely reduce what you're drawing from your portfolio. And if you're okay with that, and if you're okay with the flexibility of later on, I may have to stop or draw less, that's okay, as long as you're aware of what you're getting into. The 5th option, and probably the first one I would go to, even though it is 5 on this list, is just make sure you have a good plan. Because if you don't have a good plan, you don't really even know what the actual numbers for your options really are. So making sure you have a good plan for a Social Security claiming strategy, making sure your investments are optimized to give you the best possible return you can for whatever given level of risk you're willing to take, making sure you have a good spending and tax plan so you know where your income's going to come from. Should it come from your IRA first, maybe your Roth account, or a non-qualified, like where should it come from? Making sure you have your risks covered. Is the risk of dying too early, living too long, long-term care, having a health event, making sure you have that, you're at least aware of it and have it covered. So this is the first one I would do. It doesn't always solve all your problems, but it can at least give you a direction to go in. So how should I actually invest in retirement, right? So today I'm not going to recommend the top 12 hot stocks or how to pick the best mutual fund that performed the best last quarter, but I am going to talk about our investment philosophy and how we make decisions based on our 3 core principles and 3 specific strategies that we get from those core principles. So 3 core principles being: 1, faith in the future. So we believe companies are going to continue to innovate, are going to continue to grow and expand because we believe in humanity. And patience, because it's not going to happen in a straight line. There are going to be recessions, depressions, war, conflict, inflation. We've all seen it. And patience, because it's not going to happen all at the same time. It's not all going to be positive. So we need to have discipline, which is a 3rd principle, to not do anything silly in the meantime. And this means we're not going to let emotion, fear, or greed affect our investment strategy. Our investment strategy being, number 1, asset allocation. So we're not just going to have large US stocks, right? We're not just going to have like tech stocks. We're going to have a little bit of everything. We're going to have large US stocks, small US stocks, international stocks from developing countries, international stocks from more developed countries. We're going to have maybe some bonds or fixed income. We're going to have some cash, some real estate, some commodities. we're going to make sure we have a little bit of everything. And diversification within each of those baskets. We're not just going to have one or two stocks. We're going to have hundreds or even thousands of different stocks or bonds, so that one company getting into trouble isn't going to ruin your entire financial plan. And then the last one, diversification. The last one, rebalance. So what's going to happen is over time, one asset class is just going to do better than another. We don't know which one, but one is going to do better than the other. So what we're going to do is we're going to sell the one that's high in order to buy the one that's relatively low. And what this does is it automatically sets in the sell high, buy low, bringing us back down to that level of risk we're willing to take. So those are our core principles in our strategies. I'm going to dive into each one a little bit more to give you some numbers, because I think it's important. So, like the slide says, I want to provide a little bit of perspective on stock returns, especially the US stock returns in the past. Let me show you what this says. So this chart shows each year of the US stock market broken down in 10% increments. So each number is a year, and each column is broken down into 10% increments based on how well or how poorly the stock market performed during this time. So if we look at it, on the left are the down years. And so since 1825, right, all the way to 2021, there have been exactly 55 down years, or about 27, call it 28% down. And on the up years, there have been 142 up years, or just over 72%. So for simplicity, I'll say about 30% down and about 70% up. And these percentages have continued to hold true. So if you look at those blue numbers at the top, those blue years, that shows from 2000 to 2021, so since the turn of the century. And we see very similar percentages. So there have been 6 down years, if we include 2022 as a down year, since 2021, and 14 up years, which is that same 27%, 73% split. So even through the tech crash, the housing bubble, and even through COVID, we've still got that same percentage. That said, historical returns don't guarantee future results. But if we take a step back and look at the past, it looks pretty good, right? And like we said, patience, because when you're in the moment, it's hard to see that. So let me tell you what this particular chart shows. So this is the S&P 500, and it shows the blue bars show each year what it actually did, right? And of that, only 4 years between 2001 and 2021 had actually negative returns. Every other year was positive. But those little red triangles, those show the largest drawdown during the year. Let's look at 2020 as an example, the year COVID started, because I think it really shows very clearly how this effect works. So during 2020, the year COVID started, the stock market was up 18.4%. It may not have felt that way, but that was a really great year for the stock market. That said, while we were in it, right, from the top in about January to the bottom in mid-March, the stock market lost over a third of its value, 33.66% down in just a few months. And that's that extreme movement we can see even within the year, right? So, and if we look at these same 20-year, that same 20-year time period where only 4 had overall negative returns, half of those years, 10 of them, had dips that were greater than 10%. And half of those, so 5 years, had dips that were over a quarter, or over 25%, right? And so what we expect about every other year, there's going to be a 10% dip. And about every other one of those is going to be over a quarter down. And even when these dips happen, because it's not just going to be that your portfolio is down. It's going to be your portfolio is down and the news is telling you that everything is terrible. There's inflation. There's an international pandemic. There's something going wrong. Even when this is happening, we need to have discipline, right? And not let emotion affect our decisions. So what this is showing us is this information is a little bit older, but it's from 1998 all the way to 2018. It shows us the average return of the US stocks between that time period was about 7.2%, and the average bond fund return was about 4.6%. And during that time period, inflation was about 2.1%. Can anyone guess about how much the investors that were investing within those same funds, within that same 7.2% stock fund and 4.6% bond funds, do you know how much the average investor returned? It was 3.4%, right? The average investor got worse returns than either stocks or bonds. And why that happened is emotion, is fear and greed. So on average, whenever the stock market was crashing, people were just hand and fist pulling money out of the stock market. There was too much volatility. They couldn't handle it. But then they get greedy when it starts going back up. They want more when the market is skyrocketing. And they're doing the exact opposite, right? Whenever it's high, they're buying. Whenever it's low, they're selling. This isn't everyone, but on average, this is how it happens. Investors don't have discipline, and they let that affect their investing decisions. So asset allocation, diversification, rebalance. We're going to make sure we have a mix of stocks and bonds and alternatives. And each of those asset classes are going to go up and down at different times for different reasons. And diversification. Within each of those asset classes, we're going to have hundreds of companies, not just one or two. And rebalance. We're going to make sure when one gets too big or too small, we bring it back down into tolerance so that we don't get too risky with all of our eggs in one basket. So for those of you that are looking at the PowerPoint, I'm sorry for this splash of color, but I'll talk about what it is. So this shows each asset class ranked annually from the best performer at the top to the worst performer at the bottom. So cash is that black bar. Fixed income is the blue, and so on and so forth. You can read what each one does. But no one asset class is the best every single year, and no one asset class is the worst every single year, right? And then at the upper right-hand corner, you can see each asset class ranked overall. So for this 10-year period, which would have the best performance, which is in that blue, or in that green square, and then red, the risk or the volatility, how much fluctuation there was within that asset class. And in general, the two go together. The more performance you're going to get, the more risk you're going to have. Let's look at an example that I think really highlights why having a good asset allocated, diversified, rebalanced annually portfolio does for you. Real estate, right? So in 2019, real estate was the second best asset class there was, right? It went up over 26% in that 1 year. But then what happened? COVID happened. In 2020, real estate was the worst performing asset class there was. And in hindsight, it's easy to see, right? COVID happened, the downtown, that corporate real estate just got eviscerated. Nobody wanted it anymore. But then what happened? 2021 happened, right? And then real estate was the best performer with over 43%. What happened was people wanted homes, right? They wanted to get out of their homes, get out of their smaller homes, work remote, get something bigger. So real estate skyrocketed. And if you didn't properly rebalance through that time, your returns weren't going to be quite as good. So in 2019, when real estate was one of the better performers, we would have sold a little bit of it. In 2020, when it was the worst, we would have bought a little bit. And then 2021, when it was the best performer, we were going to sell off a little bit again. It doesn't always work out this cleanly and this well, but over time, this approach can get you slightly better return for an equal or even lower level of risk. So if we look at that yellow, those yellow boxes, that is an asset allocated, diversified, annually rebalanced, moderate portfolio. It's never going to be the best performer because it's got a little bit of everything, but it's also never going to be your worst. It's going to be in the middle top pretty much every year. And on average, you're going to get a better return for whatever level of risk you're willing to take. So that's our investment philosophy. But let's move on. How do you actually replace your paycheck, right? So after you stop receiving a monthly paycheck, how do you pay your day-to-day expenses? How do you get money into your checking account? There are plenty of different strategies with different products and bells and whistles, but I'm going to focus on two main strategies today. One is an asset allocated, diversified portfolio that rebalances periodically with just an automatic monthly distribution into your checking account. And this is the one that is at the core of most of our clients' portfolio because it has a little bit of everything, right? It gives you a little bit of stability. It makes sure you have that flexibility as well. But some of our clients just want a guarantee, right? They want somebody to stand up and say, I guarantee you will have this much income for the rest of your lives. And we can do that, right? We can find something to help give you, possibly you and your spouse, guaranteed income for the rest of your joint lives. I can't guarantee it, but we can find an insurance company that will. And you're going to pay for those guarantees, right? There are going to be trade-offs, right? Possibly higher fees, maybe lower returns. It may not be inflation adjusted. You may have to lock up your funds for a period of time, or all of the above. But for those trade-offs, you do get a guaranteed income, right? You do get something for that trade-off. Let's look at an example of how those strategies might work together, right? So Bill and Mary, right? They want to be able to spend $5,000 a month, right? That original number. But they need $3,500 a month. This is food, clothing, shelter, healthcare. That's how much they have to have each month, no matter what. But there's $1,500 extra where they want to be able to go on trips or go out to eat or do fun things with their family because of course you do, right? And they've got that same $3,000 of income through Social Security and their pension. But that means of their shortfall, of that $2,000 shortfall, $500 a month is a need, where if they don't have it, it's a real problem. Where $1,500 is a shortfall for their wants, right? Where they really would rather have it, but it's not catastrophic if they don't. So one possible way they can make that $600,000 retirement portfolio work is in the following way. So they could take a percentage of it. In this example, we use 20% of their retirement portfolio, which is about $120,000. Break that off and provide guaranteed income for the rest of their lives, no matter what, for that shortfall. Of course, there's going to be a trade-off for that. That money may not be as liquid or as flexible, but they have their needs guaranteed no matter what. And then the remainder, the 80%, the core of their portfolio can be available for that once shortfall. And because we were able to generate a little bit more than 4% of guaranteed income from that 20% piece that we broke off, that they have to draw less than 4% from their 80% portfolio. It's not a huge impact. It might only be at 3.75%, right? But every little bit can help. So that's how you can replace your paycheck. And then 5. So when should I take Social Security? Let's look at that. So in general, you should wait as long as you possibly can, all the way to age 70 to take your Social Security benefits. There's an asterisk, we'll go over that in a second, but in general, you should wait as long as you can. Let's go over the numbers for that. So in 2022, the average monthly Social Security payment was $1,657, right? If you started that at age 62, you'd only get $1,160 a month. That's a pretty steep drop off, right? Obviously, if you took it at full retirement age, you get that full 1,657. But if you waited all the way to age 70, right, the longest age where it'll continue to compound, you get over $2,000. It's a really big difference between starting as soon as you can at 62, not even getting $1,200, to waiting until age 70 and getting over 2,000. That's a really big difference, and that can really make the make or break for many people's retirements. It's over 177% more between age 62 and 70. But for some people, when might you want to take Social Security early, right? So one possible reason, and I think the most likely one, is you just need the income now, right? You're retired, you don't have assets to bridge the gap. You need the income now, so you have to take it. I get it, it's unfortunate, but sometimes you just have to. Another reason is if you have a shorter life expectancy, right? So if you got a diagnosis, or even if you have excessive family history, it could make sense to take your Social Security a little bit earlier if you have a shorter life expectancy. A third possible reason, which I disagree with, but I think it's important to cover, is if you're convinced that Social Security might go away. I'm convinced it's just not. It's politically infeasible for someone to say, I would like to reduce Social Security or get rid of it entirely. To put it bluntly, old people vote, right? And anyone that did anything trying to get rid of Social Security is just going to get politically eviscerated. That said, I might expect the Social Security tax to go up. It might be that the age at which you can take Social Security increases from, they've already done that once, right? Taking it from 65 to 66 to 67. But if you're already receiving Social Security, it's just infeasible that they're going to take it away from you. The fourth reason is if your Social Security is going to be smaller than your spouse's, it might make sense to take it early. Let me go over why that is. So if your benefit is larger than your spouse's, it's even more effective to wait as long as you can. Because what's going to happen is the first spouse to pass away is going to get the larger Social Security regardless of whose it is. So in our hypothetical example of Bill and Mary, Bill has a $2,000 Social Security, Mary has $1,000. If Bill dies first, what's going to happen is Mary is going to lose her Social Security and then take over Bill's and get $2,000 a month. But if Mary happens to die first, then her Social Security just goes away and Bill gets to keep his. In either scenario, the smaller one goes away actuarially whenever the first one dies, but the larger one stays for as long as either of you are alive. So if your Social Security is larger than your spouse's, it's even more important that you wait as long as you possibly can to take yours, because it's going to be there for a long, long time. Just one more thing before we move on to the Q&A. So I believe it can make sense for most people to get a free financial review at least once before they retire. Sometimes there can be opportunities or dangers you just don't know about. So for example, let's say you're 62 and you just started taking Social Security a few months ago, but now you really did wish you wait till 70 after seeing all this. What you can do is you can stop receiving benefits, return those few months to the SSA, and then start growing and compounding your benefits again. And there are little nuances like this for Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and investments and retirement planning and insurance and trusts and tax and everything else. And I don't have enough time to cover those in detail in a webinar. Certainly not a webinar of any length that anybody would watch. So if you have a question, or even if you just want a second opinion or a review before you retire, we'd be happy to sit down and talk with you. I'll put that Calendly link in the chat again. And all you have to do is click on that link and then select a date and time where you can meet with us. Or if you prefer, our email and phone numbers at the bottom, just shoot us an email or give us a call. We'd be happy to talk with you. So that is the end of the webinar. We're moving on to the Q&A portion. So question, I'm retiring. What should I do with my 401k? Well, the good news is you've got some options, right? So one option is you can just leave it where it's at. Many companies will let you leave your 401k there, and you can just leave it there and then take income directly from it. For most people, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. What you could also do is roll it out into an IRA. There's no tax effect, no significant tax impact that's going to be from that, and gives you more flexibility in the investments. Possibly could be lower fees and just more availability for what you can do with your with those retirement assets. Let's see. My job lets me use either a Roth or traditional. Which one should I use? It depends. They're both good. It may depend which one's better for you. So Roth means that you don't get any tax advantage when you put it in, but it will grow tax-free for the rest of your life. So hypothetically, if you put in $50,000 into a Roth, then over time it grew to $100,000. Whenever you take out that $100,000, there's no tax you have to pay on it at all. All of the principal and growth is going to be tax-free when you take it out. Alternatively, with a traditional, whenever you invest that money, you're going to get an immediate tax deduction. So with a traditional, if you put in $50,000, right, and in that year, in the year you put it in, you're going to get a tax deduction for however much you put in. But let's say it's same scenario, it grew to $100,000. Whenever you take it out, you have to pay tax on it in the year you withdraw it. So as a general guide, the younger you are, the more the Roth makes sense. And the less income you make, the more a Roth makes sense. So if you're under about 40 and as a single individual, you make less than 55,000, or as a married couple, less than 110,000, I think Roth is kind of a no-brainer. I think it makes a lot of sense. If you're over 40 and make more than that, I would tend to lean towards traditional. That's where the tax rate jumps from 12% to 22%. But there's nothing wrong with doing both of them if that makes more sense for you in your situation. So they're both good. It just depends what makes more sense for you. Here's one question that nobody ever asks, but I think is a good question to ask yourself. What should I do with my time once I retire, right? And I've known a couple of clients who had a great financial plan. They were going to be okay. They were going to be taken care of, but they were retiring from their job and had no idea what they were retiring to. So I would take some time to think about what you want to do with your time in retirement, because you have to do something. And maybe it's spend more time with friends or family. Maybe it's travel. Maybe it's something else. I don't know, but have something to retire to, or else you're just gonna sit at home and do nothing. And that's not what most people want to do. We'll go ahead and end here. Thank you Thank you for your time. Hope to talk to you soon. Bye.